Hey there everyone, and welcome to another episode of DnD Horror Stories. Sometimes when playing a game like Dungeons & Dragons, you may come across a player that uses the roleplay nature of the game as an excuse to be super creepy, much like the examples in the following horror stories. But first, if you're not already, I hope I can earn a subscription from you today. And to help entice you further, here are some kitties. Now, let's get right into the stories. Harry Potter Campaign became fan service hell for children characters. By Reddit user Charlotte Sucree. Not the weirdest story, but I'll give it a shot. Sorry, English is not my first language, and I'm new to Reddit. I have a Discord group where me and my friends play D&D all the time, with our own games and such. Some of us really love Harry Potter since we were little, so one day, one of our friends decided to DM a homebrew Harry Potter system, similar to D&D. We were all very excited, since Harry Potter is a very interactive and role-playing friendly story. Our characters had just started the wizard life, and were all 11-year-olds. So yeah, kids. The DM said her world wouldn't be exactly like Harry Potter. It would be more dark and heavy themed. We agreed, and of course the difficulty would worsen year after year, right? Wrong. I'm not going to introduce our characters, because I won't focus on them that much. The only relevant information is that they were 5 children from different houses. 1 Slytherin, 2 Ravenclaw, 1 Hufflepuff, and 1 Gryffindor. You see, the beginning was fun. We met each other, made our character traits visible, and went through some cool dark scene where the train was stopped by some Grim Reaper people that worked for a corrupt politician, etc., etc. Everything was fine until we got to our houses. Then, 3 NPCs were introduced. 1 from Slytherin, 1 from Hufflepuff, and 1 from Gryffindor. They were nice and friendly, and we thought they would be like seniors that would help us on some tasks that were too hard for children. Maybe teach us some spells, some information about the school, help us befriend teachers. Nope, they were the students, the popular people, the protagonists. Everyone in school loved them and only talked about them. Grades? Oh, the Slytherin one is good at them. Quidditch? Oh, the Gryffindor one is perfect at that. Even when we tried to have scenes focused on us, they would show up and be the boss, the popular kids. It was frustrating. And things get worse. 2 of the popular ones were dudes fighting over the only girl of their group. It was a DM self-insert character, by the way. So we were constantly forced into some romantic cliché situations where we had to help one of them get the girl, even though we didn't give a shit about their shitty love triangle. The whole campaign was focused on romance, and our characters were fucking 11. They were confused most of the time. Even the NPCs, also 11, made questions all about romance. Which teacher would you marry? Are you going out with that NPCs you spend like 30 minutes side by side, just eating on the table? I know teens are all about that and stuff, but come on. This was especially frustrating to my character, since her backstory was about having to marry some guy just for the sake of saving her father. They would marry after graduation, and just because his family was famous for its healers and influence. My plan to her story was getting her independence later, as the years passed, and she didn't even like to interact with him. She hated forced romance or being forced into romantic or erotic situations. Her fiancé was a dick 2 years older than her, and she was just a child. But the worst is yet to come. The DM introduced us to the villains, some shape-shifting creatures that absorbed wizards and used their skin as disguises to pretend they were them. Cool, right? That's what we all thought. Until that day. We were invested in the story, searching for students that were acting weird, searching for clues, We even saw some bizarre events, like one of them almost absorbing someone's skin. All good and crazy, until we finally almost tracked one of them. Sadly, using my character as bait in a date, since that thing was using her fiancé's skin and, yuck, it French kissed her. Then, when the session was done, the DM started a cutscene. A cutscene where the shapeshifters reunited and the fiancé one was scared of almost being caught by our team. One of them consoles him and tells him it's okay, and then they started making out. Yeah, she really described the shapeshifters smooching from nowhere, with details, you know? We knew she had a thing for gay men on her tables, because almost every adult male teacher was gay, or interested in men in some way. Kinda sexualizing gay people, and a huge red flag, but we thought the main issue was the extremely romance-coded game, so we just set that aside. After that, we kinda talked to her and tried to explain all the problems. Sadly, nobody was brave enough to tell her that the smooching scene was cringe as hell. The game had a few more sessions before we tried to restart from zero with a new player, but eventually, the DM was set off by our critiques and became tired of our own creation. We were sad because we loved our characters and wanted to play, but oh god, I don't want to play as a child on a game like that. She said she doesn't know how to create adventures for children characters, but come on, even if we weren't 11, shit was uncomfortable as hell. First, the NPCs only care about dating people or getting laid, and second, the bad guys suck each other's tongues to cope with stress? No thank you. P.S. I'm 25, and we were all in our 20s. TLDR, we try a dark-themed Harry Potter campaign, but the DM keeps using NPCs and villains to make cheap fan service, to the point that the villains started making out in a cutscene. Yeah, I would have to agree with OP that the whole Homebrew game was a cringe fest. It sounded like the DM just wanted her NPCs to be the main cast, and the players to be side characters. If that's the case, she should just write some fanfiction, not run a tabletop RPG. And if I had to put money on it, I bet that she already has. That and probably Twilight too. Let's get on to the next one. Weeb likes my character a little too much. By Reddit user rnunez12. This happened like 3 years ago, so the details are a little blurry, and it was a game of Shadowrun. For those who haven't heard of that game, it's basically cyberpunk mixed with D&D. It is a futuristic setting, but with different races like elves, dwarves, etc., also with magic. I had played the video game before, and was eager to try the role-playing game with this new group. The campaign was already started, and the rest of the players knew each other, I think. So, my character was a cool orc bodyguard with a shotgun and leather jacket. I made him into a tank, and he was hired to protect a member of this party because she had valuable information. The other players aren't that important, but to give a little more context, I'll explain that one was an 11-year-old child with a sniper rifle, and the other one was an adult doctor, which was married to the character I had to protect, the antagonist of this horror story. And remember the married part. The problem character in question was, and I kid you not, a little anime girl with fox ears and breasts larger than her own head. That was how the player described her as. And yes, of course it was a dude. I don't know how old this guy is, as it was an online game. At the time, I didn't know much about anime, so I just thought the group was weird, and stayed for the rest of the session because I really wanted to try the system. It was very weird. The 11-year-old with a sniper was very edgy, and the couple made me cringe every 2 minutes with their romantic role-playing. It seems that they liked my voice, or how I described my character, because at the end of the session, the lolly player said that he was handsome in that stuff, and asked to roll for seduction. I said that my character was not interested, and he told me I would have to roll higher than his character, which couldn't happen because, of course, he had max charisma, seduction, or whatever that stat was. So he rolled a ton of dice that, of course, I couldn't surpass. I told the DM my character isn't an NPC that he can control with seduction checks. DM told me that it was the same, that I, as a player, couldn't resist because his role was too high. So he proceeded to describe how both characters entered the bedroom and called the session there. Hey, at least he faded to black. Oh, and of course, the doctor was okay with this. In fact, all of the players were. Everyone said goodbye, and the next day I messaged the DM, telling him I wouldn't come back. He told me it was a shame, because everyone at the table liked me and my character. The audacity. P.S. Some other details I just remembered are that the Lolly character was also a sex worker. What a surprise. And that the player had a very strange fixation on Eevee, the Pokemon. It is a good thing that OP left that game. Luckily for them, the other players and DM showed their red flags like they were advertising the Soviet Union. And good on the player for taking those warning signs for what they were. Often in stories like these, the OPs would stick around and see if the game would get any better, and it rarely ever does. Hopefully, OP was eventually able to find a better group to play with, and live out his cybernetic orc Terminator dreams. On to the next one. The Waifu Seeker, by Reddit user Maison Liben. For this tale, we must venture into the realm of D&D 5e. Our relevant cast includes the DM, the Paladin, and myself. There were, of course, others in our campaign, but they did not take part in what went wrong. Also, my apologies if the overview nature of this post makes it a bit harder to read through. Around 2017, I was looking for a roleplay focused D&D game and came across one on Roll20 that used a completely homebrew world. After sitting in on a session of one of their other campaigns to see if our playstyles would match, I set about on fully joining. For the most part, things were fine. No one was trying to bone everything in sight, we didn't have a murder hobo, and our rules lawyer was more lax than what I have come to expect. That said, DM did include a traveling caravan that was a fetishized, not in terms of them wanting to fuck things, stereotype of Roma and traveler culture. But that was about it. As someone with half Romanical heritage and direct connection to them, in terms of interactions, this caused me to roll my eyes, but nothing more. I learned long ago that these stereotypes were par for the course, and paid it little mind. The other players and I interacted with them when we needed, but otherwise explored other options. The Paladin, on the other hand, sought to romance one of them, enchanted by the free spirits and exotic mannerisms presented. After this reached fruition, it resulted in a talk in the general chat between the DM and the Paladin. The DM lamented how he wished he could find a Roma or traveler woman so he could live in much the same way. Since this was put where everyone could see it, I commented that Roma and traveler groups do not act like that, and that his interpretation was more in line with hippies than the groups he was speaking of. This resulted in the DM questioning how I would know that, with how supposedly elusive said groups are, and the Paladin claiming that I was talking out of my ass. I revealed my heritage, and the DM backed down, but the Paladin was adamant that there weren't any real G-slurs that live in the Americas, how the only actual communities of them are in Europe, and how all the European ones definitely act as presented. I asked him not to use that word since we ourselves aren't unified on how to approach it, that it has historically been used as an ethnic slur, and told him that it'd be great if he could stop being a willfully ignorant and belligerent gaje. Before it could continue, the DM kicked him. Also yes, I do realizing my jumping to insult him in response wasn't the best thing to do in the moment. Hindsight often works like that. A few days after this concluded, the DM started contacting me about fixing his NPC caravan. For reference, this DM was progressive, and due to this, I took this as an attempt to repair what they have misinterpreted as a slightly charred bridge. I replied that I could help to a degree, but that talking in depth on our culture to outsiders is usually seen as taboo. He agreed to the limited scope, and we set to work. Jump to a few months down the line, and he asked if I wanted to remake my character as part of his modified caravan, which I refused. He then brought in a reoccurring character that was romantically interested in mine, to which my character's reaction was to grab the closest party member's arm and feign that she was with them. This character continued his pursuits until I asked him through DMs to please knock it off. It was about a week after that, and he stated through DMs that he has always had a great interest in my people, how I was a friend, and that he wanted to progress past that. I turned him down. From that point, my character was shoved to the side, to the point of some quest givers not wanting her to work for them. I asked him about it, and he initially denied it happening. Due to this, I gave it another week before stating that he was doing it again via DMs. In response, he rounded back to the rejection, adding how he didn't understand why he was rejected when my people were so passionate, and how I must just be an outlier. I told him that he already got his answer, and explained how lashing out in frustration, including having statements including the words, "your people," wasn't a good tactic to get his way. He asked if I was calling him prejudiced, and I said yes, but that I saw it as partially unintentional. And he kicked me. I have not heard from him since, and according to one of the other players, the game only lasted for 2 more months before it came to a complete halt. Taking inspiration from real-life stuff and throwing it into games like D&D is common practice, even if the details of said thing are a bit off. And it seemed like OP was a little bit annoyed at the inaccuracies, but not that much. The problem arose when DM began to get a fixation on that culture, to the point when he found out about OP's heritage, that he began to be obsessed with wanting to be in a relationship with her. When OP told him no, it should have just been left at that. But instead, the DM decided to act like a child and basically punish her through her character, until OP was just kicked from the game. And by the sounds of it, DM has no game, literally and figuratively, which is probably for the best. And that is all we have for today. As always, I appreciate all of you, and hope you don't run into any creeps in any of your games. Until next time.